Welcome to Fierce Queen's Reckoning. Let's get into the story. He told her he was in back-to-back client meetings all day. He said it in the calm, unhurried voice she had trusted for 11 years. The voice that closed deals worth millions and made his wife believe, without question, that he was exactly where he said he was. He said it while standing 40 feet below her in the atrium of the same hotel, holding a glass of champagne, his hand resting on the small of another woman's back, both of them laughing at something the man beside them had just said. Audra Lennox was watching from the mezzanine level. She had come up to find a quiet corner to finish a call. She had found something else entirely. She could see the top of his head, the charcoal blazer she had picked up for him at a boutique on Queen Street West last spring, the way he tilted slightly toward the woman when he laughed. That particular lean she had spent 11 years reading as affection. His mother was there too, standing a few feet back, speaking to a man Audra recognized as his brother-in-law. His sister was photographing the floral arrangement near the entrance, her youngest daughter balanced on one hip. The entire Lennox extended family was at this hotel, every one of them. At a celebration Audra had not been told about, for a reason she had not been given. That was the moment something shifted behind Audra's eyes. Not rage, not tears, something older and quieter and far more deliberate. She was 41 years old. She had been managing the invisible architecture of this family for over a decade, and she had done it, all of it, while keeping a secret that would have changed every single dynamic in that atrium below. Audra Lennox was not the woman any of them thought she was. Part 1. The name behind the name Audra grew up in a house where money was spoken about the way other families spoke about weather. Constant, structural, never quite neutral. Her grandmother, Cecile Fontaine, had built a textile import company out of a Montreal apartment in the 1960s and turned it into a mid-sized empire by the time Audra's mother was born. Her mother expanded into sustainable fabric licensing and sold the company at 62, for a number that had 8 digits and a comma in the middle. By the time Audra turned 25, the family trust held just under $30 million in diversified assets, a figure that generated enough annual income to be genuinely invisible if you chose to live carefully, which Audra did. Not out of necessity, out of design. She had watched what money did to the people around her. Her aunt married 3 times, each husband progressively more interested in the estate than in her. Her cousin from her mother's side stopped returning calls. The year Audra declined to co-sign a business loan. A man she dated at 22, who had seemed genuinely kind in the early months, began suggesting she might want to invest in something meaningful before their relationship had reached the 6-month mark. By the time she was 27, Audra had made a decision. She would not announce herself. She would live on the income from her consulting work, which was real and substantial on its own. She would drive a sensible car, rent a sensible apartment, wear clothes that were well-made but not conspicuous. She would find out who people were before they found out who she was. She would run the kind of experiment that only works when the conditions are controlled. She took a senior project manager role at an infrastructure consulting firm in Toronto. She was good at the work because she was good at systems. She understood how things held together, where the weak points were, what needed to be reinforced before anything else could be built on top. She met Joel Lennox at a fundraiser for a children's literacy organization when she was 29. He was a commercial real estate developer, confident without being aggressive, the kind of man who asked follow-up questions and remembered your answers. He donated meaningfully that evening, without making a performance of it. He held a door without making it a gesture. When the evening ended, he asked if she wanted to continue the conversation over coffee sometime that week. And he said it simply, without calculation. She said yes, because he had listened to her describe a project she was working on with the same attention he'd given the keynote speaker. Not because he was dazzled, because he was genuinely interested. That at 29 felt like the rarest thing she had ever encountered. They dated for 14 months before she agreed to marry him. She watched. She paid attention. She noticed the way he spoke about the women in his office, the way he handled the moment a deal fell through, the way he treated the server who brought the wrong dish twice. He was not perfect. He was impatient sometimes. He needed to be the most competent person in most rooms. He had a relationship with his mother that could be described, charitably, as enmeshed. But he was also the first man she had trusted with her actual opinions. The first man who pushed back on something she said, because he disagreed, not because he wanted to diminish her. She let herself believe. She had been careful enough, she told herself. She had done the work. The trust remained undisclosed. Her family lawyers sent quarterly statements to a separate email address she reviewed on weekend mornings before anyone else was awake. The money grew. The experiment continued, and Joel Lennox, who believed his wife earned a senior consultant's salary and drove a used Subaru because she preferred reliability over status, went 11 years without once thinking to ask why she never seemed particularly worried about anything. Part 2. The house that she ran. The house was Joel's idea, a detached Victorian in Leslieville that needed significant renovation. Audra managed the renovation project the way she managed everything, with meticulous documentation, clear contractor relationships, and a budget she tracked down to the $100 line. Joel appreciated the result. He did not ask how she had achieved it. Their daughter, Mia, was born in year 3. Their son, Theo, 2 years after that. Audra took parental leave and returned to work with both children, enrolled in a daycare she had researched, interviewed, and waitlisted for before the first trimester was over. Joel celebrated her efficiency. He did not ask what the research had cost her in hours. She ran the household the way she ran her projects, invisibly and completely. The mortgage payments came from a joint account she seeded each month. The children's RESP accounts were maximized annually. The family's insurance portfolio was reviewed every 18 months. She knew the name of every teacher both children had ever had. She remembered the dietary restriction of Joel's partner at the firm, and ordered accordingly whenever she arranged catering for their joint dinners. Joel's mother, Barbara Lennox, arrived every 6 weeks from Oakville. Audra prepared for each visit with the kind of precision she applied to client deliverables. The refrigerator was stocked with the brand of sparkling water Barbara preferred. The guest bathroom had the soap she had once mentioned she liked. The children were bathed and calm, and their artwork was displayed. Barbara noticed none of it. She surveyed the house the way someone surveys an adequate hotel room. Acceptable, functional, not what she had imagined for her son. The comments arrived disguised as observations. "You keep such a tidy home, Audra. It must be such a comfort to have something to focus on." The unspoken second half audible regardless, given that you haven't built anything particularly remarkable with your career. She was never included in the family group chat until Joel mentioned it, and she was added, then systematically not tagged. The annual Lennox family cottage weekend in Muskoka was always organized around a week when Audra happened to have a work commitment, not explicitly excluding her, simply scheduling around her absence as if it were the easier solution. Joel's sister, Renata, was warmer in person, but no different in practice. She called Audra super organized, in a tone that implied it was a personality defect. She showed up to family dinners 40 minutes late and moved through the kitchen the way someone moves through a kitchen that isn't theirs, while assuming someone else will handle the cleanup. Someone always did. Audra brought it up to Joel once. She used specific examples. She named dates. She explained without emotion the pattern she had observed over several years. Joel listened. He exhaled. He said, "My mom doesn't mean it that way. That's just how she is with people she doesn't know well yet." 11 years. The woman had known her 11 years. Audra did not raise it again. She filed it in the same place she filed everything. Organized, labeled, retrievable. The file grew heavier. The woman carrying it grew quieter. The quietness was interpreted as contentment. It was not contentment. It was arithmetic. Part 3. The atrium. She had been in Ottawa for 6 days. A government infrastructure contract that required in-person sessions at a client site. 6 days of meetings and hotel dinners alone, and the particular guilty relief of being in a space where no one needed anything from her immediately. She had called home every evening. Joel sounded normal. The kids were fine. His mother was helping out. Everything was fine. She booked a late checkout on the final day, finished her last session at noon, and caught a late afternoon flight back to Toronto. She was not expected home until the evening. She arrived earlier. The hotel where she was now standing was not her hotel. She had stopped to use the washroom on her way to the rideshare pickup. She had gone up to the mezzanine because the lobby was loud and she needed to finish a call. She had leaned against the railing while she waited for the call to connect, and that was when she looked down. Joel was in the charcoal blazer, the one from Queen Street West. His hair was freshly cut in a way that suggested the appointment had been made in advance. He was holding champagne, and the woman beside him was wearing a silk blouse and laughing at something he had said, her hand briefly touching his arm in a way that was not new, the ease of it. That was the detail that registered first. Not the touch itself, but the ease. the absence of self-consciousness. This was not a first conversation. Barbara was 15 feet back, chatting with Renata's husband. Renata was near the entrance photographing the floral display. Her children were with her, both in pressed clothes that suggested someone had put thought into the occasion. Audra counted. Joel, the woman, Barbara, Renata, Renata's husband, Renata's 2 children. An occasion. A celebration. A gathering of the Lennox family at a hotel Audra had not known they were attending, to mark something she had not been told about. She stood at the mezzanine railing for 4 minutes. She watched Joel lean down and say something directly into the woman's ear that made her laugh and tilt her, face upward toward his. She watched Barbara hand something to Renata. She watched Renata's youngest reach for the champagne and be redirected. She watched all of it with the absolute stillness of a woman who has spent her entire adult life practicing the discipline of observation over reaction. She did not cry. She did not call down. She did not take a photograph. She walked to a chair near the mezzanine window and sat down. She opened her phone. She called a number she had not dialed in nearly 2 years. Marguerite, it's Audra Fontaine. I need to activate the discretionary clause on the secondary account, and I need you to set up a meeting with the estate team for Monday morning. Marguerite Tremblay had been the managing counsel of the Fontaine Family Trust for 19 years. She did not ask for an explanation. She said, "Of course, I'll have the team ready. Welcome back, Audra." Audra ended the call. She sat for another 30 seconds, looking out the window at the street below. Then she picked up her bag and walked calmly to the elevator. Part 4. The confrontation. Joel came home on a Tuesday. 4 days later, tanned across the forearms, carrying a duty-free bag that he set on the counter without offering an explanation for why he had duty-free goods. Relaxed in a way that suggested he had been relaxed somewhere warm. The children were at Audra's mother's for 2 nights. Audra was at the kitchen table. There was a mug of tea. There was a folder. "Hey," Joel said. He opened the refrigerator, took out sparkling water, leaned against the counter. "How was the rest of Ottawa?" "Informative," Audra said. "How were the meetings?" "Long week. Lot of client movement. I'm beat." "Which clients?" The water bottle paused halfway to his mouth. "What? You said a lot of client movement. Which clients?" "You usually tell me when the Brampton deal gets active." A pause of approximately 2 seconds, which was 1 second too long for a man with a straightforward answer. "The Brampton Group, yeah." And the Mississauga proposal was heating up. It was a full week. Audra set down her mug. She opened the folder. Inside was a single printed document, a hotel folio from a 5-star property in Tulum, obtained through the kind of channels available to a woman with a trust fund and a family lawyer who had 19 years of experience in asset management. The folio showed 2 guests, 5 nights, a suite. One of the guests was Joel Lennox. She placed the document on the table and turned it to face him. Joel looked at it. His face moved through several expressions in quick succession, the last of which was something she had not seen in 11 years. He looked afraid. "I was on the mezzanine," Audra said. Her voice was even. It was the voice she used in project reviews when a contractor had missed a deadline, and she needed them to understand the full scope of what that meant without screaming. "I saw you check into the hotel. I saw the woman. I saw your mother. I saw Renata. I watched all of you for 4 minutes. I was 40 feet above you, and not one of you looked up." The kitchen was quiet. Mia's drawings were still on the refrigerator, with the letter magnet she had been arranging for months. The house settled around them. "Audra, I can explain. You cannot explain the folio," she said. "But I can explain the rest." She pulled 3 more documents from the folder. Credit card statements with highlighted entries. 2 restaurant charges on nights Joel had cited late site visits. A jewelry purchase dated 6 weeks earlier for an amount that did not correspond to anything Audra had received. A hotel charge in Hamilton for a weekend Joel had described as a team-building retreat. She laid them out, one at a time, evenly spaced. "This has been happening for at least 14 months, she said. "You are not a careful man, Joel. You have simply been married to a woman who is careful enough for both of you, and you have relied on that carelessness being invisible." Joel put the water bottle down. His hands were not entirely steady. "It was a mistake. It got out of hand. I know how this sounds. 14 months is not a mistake. 14 months is a parallel life." She closed the folder. She placed her hands flat on the table. She looked at him and, for the first time since the hotel atrium, she allowed him to see her without the version of herself she had been maintaining for over a decade. Not the efficient wife. Not the organized mother. Not the woman who absorbed every slight and every exclusion and every dismissal, and converted it into fuel for the engine she ran quietly in the background. She let him see the woman underneath, the one who had been running calculations since she stood at that mezzanine railing, the one whose stillness had never been passivity. "I want a divorce," she said. "The papers will be filed on Monday. You can use the guest room until the process begins. After that, you'll need to make arrangements." "We have children," he said. "We have a life here. I'll end it. I'll end it tonight. I'll call her right now." "We have 2 children," Audra said. "That's the only reason we're having this conversation in a kitchen instead of through lawyers alone." She stood. She picked up the folder. She walked toward the hallway. "Audra, please. I will fix this. I will do whatever you need." She stopped at the doorway. She did not turn around fully. She angled her head just enough so he could see her profile. "You should know something, Joel, before you start planning your next move." She paused. "I am not the woman you think I am. I have never been the woman you think I am." She walked upstairs. She closed the bedroom door. She sat on the edge of the bed and breathed for 30 seconds with her eyes closed. Then she opened her laptop and sent 2 emails. One to Marguerite, one to a wealth management contact she had kept dormant for years. Part 5. The moves the divorce filing landed on Joel's lawyer's desk on a Monday, as promised. What Joel did not know was that the filing was only the surface. Underneath it, Audra Fontaine-Lennox was doing what the Fontaines had always done when the conditions required it. She was restructuring. The first move was the house. The Victorian in Leslieville had been purchased 11 years ago, with a down payment from a personal account Audra held independently, funded from a portion of her trust income, which Joel had never questioned, because Joel had never been particularly interested in the granular mechanics of their finances. He had been interested in the results. The results had always been impeccable. Her lawyers filed documentation, establishing her disproportionate financial contribution to the property acquisition. The motion arrived at Joel's legal team, like something they had not prepared for. The second move was quieter. Joel had been working for 3 years to secure anchor tenancy for a mixed-use development in the West End of Toronto. A significant project, a career-defining one, the kind that would establish him as a developer with serious institutional backing, rather than a mid-size operator who'd been successful but not transformative. The anchor tenant he'd been pursuing was a cultural institution looking to expand its footprint. An arts foundation planning a new satellite gallery in the neighborhood. The foundation had received a significant gift the previous spring from a private donor. The gift had restructured the foundation's expansion budget. The donor had asked to remain anonymous. The gift had come from a trust. Audra had given the foundation enough to shape their criteria for the new space. Not to exclude Joel specifically, just to prioritize certain values in their real estate partnership: long-term community orientation, resident consultation history, gender equity and development leadership. Joel's firm did not score well on 2 of these. He had never thought to make sure it did. When the foundation announced it was pursuing a different site entirely, Joel's project manager told him, "The numbers worked. We just weren't the right fit." Joel spent 2 weeks trying to find out what had changed. He never found out. The third move was the one that took longest. Audra's trust held a minority stake in a property data company that Joel's firm subscribed to for market analysis. The subscription was renewed annually. When the renewal came up, the company offered Joel's firm a revised pricing structure that was, technically, still competitive, just less favorable than before. It wasn't enough to sink anything. That wasn't the point. The point was that every professional space Joel occupied, Audra Fontaine-Lennox occupied too. Quietly, structurally, in ways he had never thought to look for, because he had never thought to wonder who she actually was. He found out in fragments: the trust, the Fontaine name, a profile in a business publication that described her mother as one of the more significant private donors to affordable housing initiatives in Ontario, and mentioned Audra as having recently joined the Fontaine Foundation board. Joel read the profile on his phone, sitting in the house that was quietly disintegrating without her. The internet account was in her name. The property management portal she had set up logged him out. He did not know who handled the furnace maintenance. He called the number on the inspection sticker, and it rang to a voicemail for a company Audra had hired 3 years ago. He left a message. They called back and asked to confirm the account holder. He could not. His sister, Renata, came to help for 10 days. She discovered, in those 10 days, what it actually meant to run the household Audra had been running. The schedules, the accounts, the service providers, the children's medical information organized in a binder in the hall closet, the meal planning system, the emergency contact lists cross-referenced by scenario. Renata called their mother from the driveway on day 6. Mom. She was running everything. I don't mean she helped a lot. I mean she was running everything, and we treated her like she was the wallpaper. Barbara said, she always seemed to enjoy being organized. Renata said, that's not the same thing. It was the most honest the Lennox family had ever been about Audra, and it happened 6 weeks too late, in a driveway, to an audience of one. Part 6. The woman she actually was. Audra moved into a condo in the Distillery District 8 weeks after the filing. Not a rental, a purchase. 3 bedrooms, 12-foot ceilings, a terrace with a gas line for a proper outdoor kitchen, and a view of the lake on clear days. She bought it the way her grandmother had bought things, without ceremony and without debt. Mia claimed the bedroom with the window bench. Theo claimed the terrace and declared it the formal domain of their cat, Biscuit, who had lived with them for 6 years, and who Audra had fed and taken to the vet and scheduled boarding for, and loved continuously, while Joel occasionally petted on his way to the refrigerator. Biscuit adjusted immediately. The children were more cautious, and then within a month were not. Audra took a formal role with the Fontaine Foundation, that she had been declining for nearly a decade. She stepped into the operational leadership position and applied to it the same systems thinking she had spent 11 years deploying for a household that had absorbed her effort without acknowledging its source. She was, unsurprisingly, exceptional. Her first initiative was a partnership between the foundation and 3 women's shelters in the GTA, a funding model she designed from scratch in 6 weeks that her colleagues described as the clearest thing they had seen in years. A profile ran in a Toronto magazine 6 months after the divorce was finalized. The photograph showed Audra on her terrace, simple gray wrap, hair pulled back, the lake visible behind her in the kind of late afternoon light that you can't manufacture. The article spent most of its pages on the foundation's work and mentioned her marriage in a single subordinate clause, tucked between 2 sentences about her grandmother. Joel's assistant forwarded it to him. Joel read it while sitting in the Leslieville house, which still had his name on the mortgage and now had a lawn that needed attention and a furnace filter overdue for replacement. He read the profile twice. He looked at the photograph and thought he recognized her posture before he recognized her face, the particular quality of her composure, the way she took up exactly the space she occupied, and no more. But did it like someone who had decided what that space was worth. He had been married to her for 11 years, and he had never once asked about her grandmother's company. Part 7. The call came on a Saturday evening in October. Audra was on her terrace. The children were at their father's for the weekend, the custody schedule running the way she had designed it. Functional, predictable, in the children's interest, without requiring her to perform forgiveness she had not yet completed. Biscuit was on the chair beside her. The city was doing what the city does in October, the light going golden and then gone, the lake darkening. Her phone buzzed. She let it ring 3 times. Audra. Joel's voice had changed. The ease was gone. The performance of capability was gone. What remained was something she recognized from his worst weeks in the early years of his business, when a deal had collapsed, and he hadn't yet learned to manage the fear. He sounded like that now, but older. Like a man standing in rubble and realizing the rubble was structural. Joel, I need to see you, not through the lawyers. I just need 20 minutes. There's nothing that 20 minutes would accomplish that an email couldn't. I know about the trust. I know about the foundation. Renata found the profile and a pause. I know who your family is. Audra looked at the lake. A freighter was crossing, slow and lit. You know now, she said. You didn't know for 11 years because you never asked. You never asked about my family. You never asked why I drove a used car while never seeming anxious about anything. You never asked about my grandmother. You never asked who handled the down payment on the house. You were not interested in those questions because you were not interested in me as a subject. You were interested in what I provided. That's not fair. It is exactly fair. You had 11 years to be curious about your own wife. You spent them letting your mother treat me like a category below family, letting your sister perform affection while contributing nothing, and letting another woman into our life. And now you're calling because someone forwarded you an article and you've Googled a name. Silence. My mother wants to speak with you. She wants to apologize in person. Your mother wants to renegotiate now that she's seen the balance sheet. That is not the same thing as an apology. She spent 11 years treating me like the help. She does not get to recalibrate based on new financial information. A longer pause. Renata asked if you might be willing to connect her with some of the foundation's community partners. She's been thinking about starting a nonprofit. Audra almost smiled, not with her mouth, with something quieter. Renata, who had called her super organized in a tone that rhymed with limited, who had left coats on chairs. Audra had straightened and taken second helpings before she'd had a first and sent her children to Audra's house, without confirming whether it was a convenient time, was now requesting professional access from the woman she had never once included in a conversation that mattered. The Foundation's contact information is on our website, Audra said. She can submit an inquiry through the standard process like any other applicant. Audra, is there something relevant to the children or the financial agreement you need to address? A beat. The West End development fell apart. The anchor tenant went in another direction. My partner pulled his capital. The whole project is stalled, and I can't figure out why the Foundation's criteria shifted when they did. Audra set her tea down. She let 5 seconds pass. Not cruelty, arithmetic. The Foundation revised its partnership criteria last spring based on input from our new board, she said. I joined the board in February. The silence that followed was the kind that contains information. The criteria were about community values and equity leadership, she continued. Your firm's track record didn't align. That had nothing to do with our marriage. It had everything to do with who you've chosen to be in your professional life, which, like the rest of it, you never thought to examine. You cost me that project. The criteria cost you that project. I didn't design them to exclude you. I designed them to reflect what the Foundation values. If your firm had different values, the outcome would have been different. She paused. You called me controlled. Your mother called me limited. Your sister called me intense, as if it were a character flaw and not a description of someone doing the work that keeps a household alive. You treated me like infrastructure. And infrastructure, Joel, is invisible right up until the moment it fails. Her voice stayed level, even. The voice of a woman who had spent 11 years practicing that particular discipline and was now using it for a different purpose entirely. I hid my family background because I wanted to find out who I was to someone who didn't already know the number attached to my name. I found out. That information is now available to me, and I've acted on it. She ended the call. She set the phone on the glass table. She picked up her tea and drank it slowly, watching the freighter cross the darkening lake. Part 8. The deletion on a Wednesday evening in November, 14 months after the hotel atrium. Audra sat on her terrace with a blanket she had bought herself the week she moved in. Cashmere, properly warm, purchased without a coupon and without the faint background guilt that had accompanied every non-essential expenditure for a decade. It cost what it cost. She did not calculate whether she deserved it. She opened her phone. She scrolled to a folder she had created. The evening she walked out of the hotel and sat in a rideshare back to her original hotel and thought, with great calm, about what came next. The folder contained the hotel folio, the credit card statements, the restaurant charges, the jewelry receipt, the documented evidence of 14 months of a life she had not been told about. It had served its purpose. The divorce was final. Custody was settled. The property had been resolved through her lawyers, in a way that reflected her actual contribution to its acquisition. The Foundation was growing. The children were safe and sleeping, and in the morning they would be back with her for the week. And Mia had asked if they could make waffles. And Audra had said yes. She looked at the folder for a moment. Then she pressed delete. The phone asked her to confirm. She confirmed. The screen returned her camera roll. Mia on the terrace with a sketchbook. Theo with Biscuit on his lap, both of them appearing to be asleep. The lake on a clear morning from her bedroom window. A photograph she had taken of her own hands on the Foundation boardroom table the day she had presented her first initiative, which she had taken partly as a document and partly as a reminder. A selfie with her mother at a gala in September. Both of them in black. Both of them laughing at something her mother had just said. Her mother's face showing the particular pride that doesn't need to announce itself. She closed the phone. She pulled the blanket tighter. She looked at the city. She thought about the hotel atrium. Not about Joel and the woman and the champagne. She thought about the mezzanine railing. She thought about the 4 minutes she had stood there, and the thing that had moved through her when she realized what she was seeing. Not the shattering she might have expected. Not the collapse. The opposite. The clarification. The moment the dataset becomes complete enough to make The decision obvious. She had been pretending to be smaller than she was for so long that the habit had become invisible to her too. She had tested the experiment and gotten her results. Love without curiosity is not love. It is tenancy. Joel had taken up residence in a life she built and never once thought to read the lease. She was not invisible anymore. She was Audra Fontaine. Her family's name was on a building at a women's shelter in Scarborough that had opened 6 weeks ago. Her grandmother's photograph was in the foundation's offices. Her children were going to grow up, watching a woman build things with her own hands and her own name, and her own particular refusal to be estimated at less than her actual value. The October wind moved through the terrace planters. The cat came and settled against her leg. The lake held the last of the light, that particular October light, that people who have lived in Toronto a long time recognize as precious and brief, and worth every difficult thing the winter is about to ask of them. Some women leave with noise. Some women leave with silence. Audra Fontaine left with documentation, a signed court order, and a foundation initiative that had already received its first national press mention. She dismantled the illusion with the same careful attention she had used to build a household that 11 people benefited from and 1 person ran. And when it was done, she did not look back. The view from where she was sitting was considerably better. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and turn on notifications. We tell stories about women who discover what they are actually worth. The next one is already on its way.